Well, good evening, all. Thank you for coming early tonight for our first work session related to the 2026 budget. We have a couple of presentations tonight. Sorry, but you're going to hear me drone on for a good portion of it. As we go through the 2026-2035 capital improvement plan, then we will cover the administrative budgets, some of the highlights there, and then we will get into community development and recreation, where you will finally get a respite from my chalkboard grading voice, and Director Centeno will cover that, and then we'll talk about our next meeting and answer any questions along the way. As we're going through this, feel free to interrupt. This is a discussion. I've just put some framework together in terms of where we're headed in terms of the capital plan. So kind of skipping a couple slides forward, I'll just run through our key projects for 2026. As we kind of get going through there, as you have questions about the projects, we're here to answer any questions that you have. Probably from the administrative side, the biggest item that we have for next year is we have filed a grant to update the comprehensive plan entitled 1617 with DOLA. The project itself would occur over a 2-year period for about $267,500. It would include hiring of a limited term employee that would increase our planning capacity, that would be responsible for doing the rewrite of the codes and working with the code subcommittee. DOLA would be covering about $171,000 of the total cost, with the town picking up the remaining portion. About 10% of the overall project cost would fall to the water and sewer utility as well, because it is obviously it will impact the water and sewer utilities rather significantly. I think we've got a lot of challenges that we're going to have in doing the comprehensive rewrite of both the comprehensive plan as well as Title 16 and 17. 16 is our subdivision rules and regulations. 17 is the zoning code. And the main purpose of this is to bring everything in line with our housing needs assessment that was done earlier in 2025. This is the logical next step to kind of bring things in alignment so that we, achieve our Prop 123 goals with affordable housing, but then also try to address some of those issues along the way. Obviously, we're waiting on the grant approval before we're going to hire somebody, because if we don't have the funds, we just don't have the funds to do it, and then we'll have to, look a little differently at how we might accomplish that. The next two projects are related to the branding work we've done that is going to lead into our website replacement. We're pretty much just about wrapping up the branding side of things. We'll be back in front of you on the 27th with a couple of redesigns, hopefully for direction to move forward, at which time we'll move into the website replacement process, which will include just completely redesigning how our web presence is looking. One of the areas that we will likely include with this whole process is we'll morph over to instead of townofsilt.org as our address, we'll move to silt.gov, which we're working towards securing. It's a special handle that requires, for whatever reason, my social security number, which I don't really like, but that's their rules.
I think that number is low. The planned $25,000 design, I assume that includes implementation and getting to day zero, as they say, or launching it.
It seemed low to me, too.
I think that number's low. I would actually go up to 35 or maybe even 40. There's a lot of third-party integrations, licensing, translations, ADA, and WCAG compliance. We're going to need help from whomever the vendor is for probably the first 3 to 6 months to fix stuff that we didn't catch by launch. So probably at least 1 year of a support agreement with them, which won't be cheap. We're going to need training for staff on how to do the content updates.
So you're saying at least 50?
I was going to say 50, but I didn't want to scare anyone. I think 40 to 50 is a more reasonable ballpark.
Okay, we can certainly make that change.
Is the PD going to have their own website, or are they going to be integrated with this?
I would very much like to integrate the PD website into the town's website so that there wouldn't be separate websites.
It should be integrated. It's a town service.
No, I agree.
Yeah, I think it- all town
Yes.
services.
And their
under one umbrella.
There are SEO benefits, and there are lots of technical reasons, but I think functionally for the residents, it should all be under silt.gov.
Yeah, no, I don't like them having their own, so, yeah.
Same tool set, same UI, same branding, everything.
That's a whole additional discussion point that we have to have, not as part of this, but, okay, so we'll make that adjustment. Next, as you all know, we started Phase 1 of Community Park. We've got the park currently closed and are doing quite a bit of grading work out there, tearing out the existing facilities, et cetera. Right now, if you I should preface this. Phase 1 was funded with a $1.2 million GOCO grant, $900,000 grant, $300,000 contribution from the town. Our estimates at this point is that we've got project costs that are around $800,000. Phase 2 was for the one feature that when we did community outreach that everybody wanted, which was some sort of water feature splash pad. We didn't feel like we could fit it all under Phase 1, so we included a Phase 2, assuming that we would utilize the spring 2026 traditional FMLD grant to backfill was anticipated to be about a $650,000 cost. We may be very different in that simply because I think based upon the numbers that Director Lundin is putting together, we're probably in that $700,000 to $800,000 range of expenses. So we're going to have leftover funds from Phase 1 that we can use in Phase 2. But that's kind of where we stand right now on that second phase. The next piece that we applied in 2025 fall, we applied for a $30,000 mini grant from FMLD. We were awarded that grant, which will include the installation of a shelter for the horseshoe pitchers and then improvements to not only the disc golf course, which will include some new tee boxes, some stairs, signage, but we may also look at doing some irrigation of the supposedly grassed area that is west of the actual Roy Moore gym. Right now that is unirrigated and it pretty much dries out and it's just weeds. So we are going to be looking at some improvements along there. Mayor's favorite project, the conversion of the cattails to some play fields. We're hoping to apply for a spring mini grant that would allow us to start the process to pull that land out of the wetlands. Obviously, you can't do anything with it unless you can pull it out of wetlands. We do have a range of costs of what it's going to cost to pull it out of the wetlands. As long as we don't get any huge objections, it could be relatively low cost to pull it out and then just have a rudimentary plan where we'd have a couple of play fields. The thought at this point is that we would have a couple of soccer fields, some pickleball courts, and a parking lot. That's what the extent of the improvements would be. It would likely remain as a stormwater detention area in larger storm events where it's not gonna be necessarily, the play fields, the grass play fields in particular, aren't gonna necessarily be usable if you get a big rain event. They're gonna be underwater. And I will just tell you, I grew up playing soccer on fields that were detention areas. When we had big rains, didn't play soccer because it was underwater. So it's a good use of low land for some play fields that I think Director Centeno would say we are sorely in need of. PD, we really don't have a lot. It's just continued replacement of squad cars. There is a thought that we may transition towards a full-size pickup as opposed to the Durangos for some flexibility. That is yet to be determined. And then if we, with the rebranding work we're doing, we'll end up rebranding the squads as well. Those are the two project costs for next year.
Do we need a lot of new police vehicles?
We just keep replacing them.
Okay, so it's just gonna always be a perpetual.
Yeah, and
Okay.
at some point, and we had this conversation earlier today as part of one of our operational discussions, even though we have individualized take-home squads, the department really needs +1. Because squads get damaged, they break, and you can't always replace them that quick. You can't get them fixed that quickly. So there really needs to be a +1. I hate the thought of it. I hate to have, but it may be that we're keeping an older squad in reserve along the way as we kind of work through some of the details.
Okay.
And yes, we will make sure we buy the right squads this time. Public Works and Director Lundin can jump in on this. We've got the second phase of Grand Avenue from North Valley Drive to approximately 12th Street. It's a planned $1 million project again. We were awarded a $500,000 FMLD grant. A good portion of and I think Director Lundin, you may want to jump in here, but a good portion of this is water utility.
Correct. About 70% of it is water utility.
And I had put a third, so it's actually 70%.
And didn't the newspaper say you got 500,000
Correct.
for it? Okay. Nice.
So of the,
Probably not as much as you wanted though, but how much did you apply for? The whole?
did
We
we?
applied for, I think it was 700 and some thousand.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what the 70% would have been of the project. So.
Gotcha. Okay.
The other two projects that we have on the docket for 2026 are some design and engineering work for both the 9th Street project, which is from the roundabout north to Orchard Avenue, and then also starting the design work for replacing water main in Lyons residential subdivision. We had a break in,
It was a fire hydrant line, service line that wore a hole in it, just like we had the problems on Pine.
it's ductile iron, and ductile iron doesn't do well in our soils. And so the concern is, and there's no way for us to televise the line like we can with sewer, but the concern is that we're likely to have continued problems in that subdivision with the ductile iron, so we better get going with the planning and replacement.
Pioneer Drive's the only one that's been replaced so
Right.
far, right? Okay.
Yeah. And that's a significant water utility project as opposed to general. I think we've got it in the plan as 80% water, 20% general, because we're putting a new driving surface out there, so it's a benefit to the town. Irrigation and wastewater, neither have any major projects planned for 2026. One thing that we have been internally discussing is that we did a recalculation of the sewer tap fees. Right now, we froze it at 12,000 and change. We can't really support that 12,000 with the projects that we have on the docket. So we're recommending that tap fee be reduced to roughly $9,500. And that's based upon a $16 million water treatment plant upgrade, which would bring us into the current regulations as they stand, which take effect, I think it's 2029, and then we have 3 years to make the improvements. Our annual collection improvements, depreciation, based upon the taps that we're planning. This is the same calculation that we did for the water treatment plant. It's just for sewer. I won't say anything more about the water treatment plant upgrades because we don't know what they're going to look like at this point and what the new regulations will end up being. Water utility, we have phase 2 of the water treatment plant improvements. We should be bringing I think our startup for the new plant is in November.
Thought it was December.
Fully functional, turned over to us, producing water in December. So at that point, the water treatment plant phase 1 improvements will be done. We'll be doing new, producing water in a better manner. So we move on to phase 2. And if you recall, you received $2,053,000 of congressionally directed spending that was awarded after you had awarded all the contracts and issued the debt for phase 1 water treatment plant improvements. So this is now phase 2, which is cleaning out the existing lines in Old Town. It's called ice pigging. It basically scours the lines and cleans out all the sediments, further helping us reduce the incidence of the brown water. But then a big piece of it will be to replace the ductile iron water main on 7th Street from the northern terminus of the Bohr project. Where does the PVC start?
It'll go all the way up to above the shop, right there where the concrete pipe starts, the 14-inch. So it'll be right there. It's the cemetery entrance is where the new line will stop.
So that's the plan. We will be filing for another DOLA grant in the spring of 2026 to round out the $3 million estimate for those 2 projects.
Do you want to try to do the whole thing at once, or are you going to phase it? The 7th Street.
If we can do the whole thing at once, it'd probably be in phases, but one contractor.
Oh, okay.
The 2026 for senior housing, we were awarded $200,000 of the $500,000 grant that we had filed with FMLD jointly with Garco Housing Authority. So we're going to have to reduce that project scope initially, which is the remodel of the senior housing units. We will apply again for phase 2 in the spring of 2026. So we've got approximately $300,000 to work with for this first phase, which until we really get into it, we don't know exactly what the cost is. First phase will be a little bit more expensive because we have to reconstitute the ADA unit that we do have. We've got to move some walls in the bathroom and do a larger remodel for that unit, but the rest will be pretty innocuous. And we think that we'll at least be able to get the west end or the east end of the building. Is it the east or the west end of the building done?
We have 3 empty units on the west end of the building, so that's where we'll start.
And so we'll get through the first phase, which is the west end of the building, and then hopefully we can move on to the second phase. Probably the couple of the biggest things hanging out there, you know that we are working on analyzing our space requirements for operations. That report some initial findings will be presented shortly to the Board of Trustees, with the final report probably in the January-February range. At that point, we're going to know the facilities that we need, and we're going to have an idea of what the cost is going to look like. Our estimate, and this was a swag on our part, was that we were going to have costs in the $12 million range to do town hall, police station, and public works expansions. We do not have a revenue source that would cover any of those improvements. So there will have to be this is a policy decision by the Board of Trustees. There will have to be, how are we going to fund it if we're going to fund it? And when do you ask the voters? The earliest you could ask the voters would be the fall of 2026. There's a lot of legwork that would need to be done from the beginning of 2026 to the time where you have to certify ballot language before you would be in a position to put it on the ballot. I think we've talked about the fact that we have had conversations with the Catholic Church that they are interested in a land swap where they would move out and we would take control of that land. Obviously, there's some logistics that we would have to work through. I think, ideally, our first, foray or our first phase is probably taking care of Public Works. Second phase being Town Hall and Police Station. Don't know what that looks like yet. Don't know what it includes for keeping this building functional or repurposing Town Center. All those items are on the table and will be part of the final reports that come out from our consulting architects, engineers, Wold, when they get you some preliminary and then final report. If you had to borrow $12 million and pay it over a 20-year period at interest rates, you'd be looking at about an $850,000 payment annually. Just so you're aware, a 1% sales tax generates currently around $660,000. Just facts. We've threw in another swag for if we are able to pull the cattails out of wetland delineation, what it would look like to build play fields down there, pickleball courts, parking lot, et cetera, and we estimated that at about $2.1 million. We would anticipate filing a grant with the Land Water Conservation Fund, which would fund a good portion of that project. Sadly, jumping back up to facility upgrades, there's very little money out there for town halls, police stations, or public works facilities. We might be able to cobble some dollars together, but at this point, it's certainly not going to fund a big portion of that project. We have some planning to do for Veterans Park improvements. We have that scheduled right now for 2029. It may happen earlier. I'm not going to say that it is or it isn't out there, what year it needs to be. We think we can do some in-house conceptual planning. We don't necessarily need to hire somebody to do it because we're really talking about relocating shelters, reconfiguring the park a little bit in terms of what's used where. It's not a big project. We don't think it's that big of a project. Not significant amounts of grading. Our estimate for that project is about $400,000. Another big one that hangs out there is we're working on all the trail system down along the river. At some point, we have to island hop to get over to the Silt River Preserve. Again, this is another swag to go from island to island. We have to go from the island where the old water treatment intake was, I think it was, on one of the islands.
Yeah, the whole plant was there at
Yeah,
one time.
over to the Bird Island, and then over to the Silt River Preserve. And we have some logistics that we have to deal with in terms of that, staying out of the 100-year flood as much as possible. And we have an eagle's nest we have to avoid. All things that are going to make that project a little bit interesting as we go. I would assume that our funding stack would likely include GOCO, FMLD. We may be able to use some dollars out of our Urban Renewal Authority to, if we get that up and running, to help offset some of those costs. But that's going to be a big project as well. Then we've got the Grand Avenue reconstructions, Phase 3 and Phase 4. We're going to get to about 12th Street this next year, then we'll get 12th to 9th, and then we'll have to 9th West. Once we get to 7th Street, the project will go much faster because we don't have water main to replace. Did I get that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. The Phase 4, if we're all doing it all in one shot, might be more on the lines of about 1.5 million as opposed to $1 million. Again, future projects, we're gonna start the design and engineering for 9th Street from Main to Orchard. We estimate that project cost at about $800,000. We anticipate that spring of 2027, we'd use one of our traditional FMLD grants to help fund that project. Then we've got 6th, 4th, and 5th Streets. Again, same, we'll be doing some of the planning for those in advance so that we're ready to go, utilizing FMLD as much as we possibly can to offset those costs. The 7th Street pedestrian bridge and plaza. We had a follow-up phone call with the Build Grant folks this past week. There were 30 projects that were funded out of the $500 million that they had available. The town was one of 67 projects, if I'm remembering correctly, that were deemed a project of interest, which basically, what I took out of the meeting was if they would have had enough money, we would have gotten funded for the project. This next cycle, there is $1.5 billion of funding, so 3 times as much funding. The town was highly rated on the vast majority of the criteria. We can improve on a couple of them. It's not that we really need to, because we were still considered one of those projects of interest. There were a total of 815 grant applications filed, so we scored very well. So it's a
70.
yeah, yeah.
That's good.
So, bottom line is we're feeling pretty good about it, but we still have to get over the hump and actually get a grant to construct the thing.
So that's the bridge and the plaza.
Correct,
Okay.
correct. Wastewater treatment plant upgrades, as I mentioned, we've got a $16 million guess as to what those costs would be, so that we can return the water at the right temperature to the Colorado River. We wouldn't start planning that, and we've been advised to not start planning for this too early because there's an anticipation that these regulations will change. And so we're not planning to start really heavily getting into that until 2029 and then construct sometime after that. We would hope that there would be some federal funding involved in that it wouldn't necessarily fall entirely to the ratepayers. The rate work that we've done in the past has said that we can afford roughly $15–16 million of debt without having to adjust rates significantly. To make it's not like a repeat of the water plant project. I think and I apologize on the water storage and the document. I must have been interrupted and didn't get back to change. It has been suggested that we need additional storage capacity. Right now we have, 950,000 gallons, an 800,000 and a 150.
Yeah, and it's 75.
Okay, 75, it provides help, but it really doesn't provide much. We really need to replace or make redundant roughly, it would be good to have 800,000 gallons. Tony Zancanella has said, well, if you're going to build 800,000 gallons, you might as well build 1 million. We've had some internal discussions, and this is going to take some planning, and we're going to have to do some work on it. But we might be able to put another tank on the footprint of the 800,000 gallon tank. Maybe not the same size, but create some better redundancy. Right now, I think Our storage capacity would keep the town running for
4 days if
Four-
the tanks were full.
4 days if the tanks are full. It's not a lot of time, but it would be good to have more time. But the bottom line is we need to be able to take the main tank offline, repair it, and put it back online and still have storage capacity. Doesn't necessarily have to be 1-to-1, but we have to be in that position. The good news is the new water treatment plant will be able to produce 1 million gallons a day and pump it to our tanks. So we shouldn't be running into the problem where we're trying to play catch up all the time, especially when there's problems with turbidity of the Colorado River, which is our main water source. So we should be in a much better position. But that's going to be a big one on the water side. We've talked about, the second phase or future phase of Painted Pasture, possibly having a tank located out there. If we need 1 million gallons, do we put 2 500,000 gallon tanks up someplace as opposed to 1 million gallon tanks? So we're spreading it out a little bit more, makes it easier to take something offline. But that's a conversation that we're going to have going on. So that kind of is your very quick review of the future capital needs of the town. There's a lot of them, and many of them are going to require significant outside funding sources. So it's not to say we're going to be writing checks to do all this stuff anytime soon, because they require outside funding sources. I'm not going to say there's no way the town could afford to do all these things, but you're likely not going to choose to afford all of them without significant grant funding. So I don't know if anybody has any questions on the capital side.
I have a quick question. Go ahead, Jerry.
Oh, the generator's built to run at full capacity, right?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, I thought so, but I wasn't sure, so, okay.
If,
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if we reapplied in January for the build grant, where would that put us?
Hopefully awarded a grant and building a bridge.
But like, when would the bridge be, when could I walk across the bridge?
My guess is that we would spend, if we were, the award of the grant usually occurs around May.
Okay,
So from May to probably the end of the summer, so September-ish, we'll be putting together bid package and going through all that process. Then you're putting it out to bid. Then somebody's got to start construction, and my guess it's at least a year-long project.
okay.
And, we did have, part of the conversation we had with the build grant folks is, I think we've been pretty successful with the CMAR process that we use for the water treatment plant. And they're open to the CMAR process for the construction of the bridge. This is not nearly as technical as the water treatment plant, so it may not be the best solution, but as we get into it, it's something we would discuss. The biggest issues is going to be you got to put down the piers, and then you got to lay the bridge girders, and that's going to involve disruption of traffic on I-70, so that's going to have to be coordinated. They tend to frown upon cranes lifting very heavy objects as traffic goes under. I don't know why, but
At least let people know.
it's like they're fearful they're going to drop one.
That's never happened. No, okay.
For these projects that are many years out into the future, are these amounts based on 2025 figures, or are you building in
I've
the
tried to
increase
build in
costs?
increases, but as we know, construction costs can vary rather dramatically from year to year based upon what's going on.
But you're not using this year's numbers.
I'm not using this year's number. If it's a 2030 project, it's being inflated.
Perfect.
That was my question. Thank you.
Probably not enough, but it's being inflated to the.
At least we're somewhat realistic
Yeah.
versus
But for 2026 and 27 projects, they're more accurate relative to that
Yes.
inflation.
Yeah, and in my public finance career, I used to say that we have a pretty good idea what something's gonna cost this year. Next year, we have less certainty. The year after that, even less, and by the time you get to year 5, they're really guesses.
Okay, thank you.
The one thing I can tell you is just about every project that we have on the docket will cost more next year than it will cost this year.
Is there a year when it's gonna go down? Just
I
kidding.
would argue no,
Probably
but
not.
I don't want to be quoted as saying that something could never happen. I would, based upon where I am in my career, I don't want to see that because that means lots of other things have gone wrong in the world.
Yeah, so it's just natural, part of the process to
Yeah.
just build in for that ever-increasing cost, yeah.
It would be nice to say things aren't going to keep getting more expensive, but they seem to.
I just came from a conference with an economist that spoke to us for a couple hours, and 2030 to 32, his outlook is not good for those years.
So we're just going to put all projects off till 2030.
32, yeah.
And I've got to have all my money out of the stock market by then?
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
Precious metals, gold.
Yes. He's talking housing loans at 17, 18%.
You don't have to answer the question, but I'll be very curious as to who it was and why he thinks that.
Thinks that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he's out there in the public. It's Brian Ballou.
Okay.
Hopefully he's wrong. He's got a good track record over the last 42 years.
Yeah, but I think we're doing the right thing, positioning ourselves to be able to apply for those loans and moving those projects forward.
That's
Just gotta keep moving forward.
realistic.
I think it's a good plan.
Okay. So then, moving into more of the budget items. The Board of Trustees budget is really pretty much the same as it was last year, except for the fact that I added a line item for a contribution to RAFTA of $40,000. I had a meeting with the executive director of RAFTA or the manager, this past Friday, of which we were informed that the county has pulled all funding for the hogback route, which is a $540,000 hit to RAFTA's operating budget for running that route. Right now, they lose about $800,000 a year running the route. In that conversation, it was suggested that they will be able to keep the hogback running through the winter, probably to about May, and then they don't know what's going to happen after that. So that route might cease to exist come May or mid-year next year. I would hope that it wouldn't. But I think it will add to the discussion that we have later at the regular meeting tonight with the transportation survey findings. I think it was brought up last week at the candidate forum by all the candidates of concerns about transportation. This is going to be a very interesting discussion as we go forward on how we're going to deal with transportation. And I know, Trustee Klassen, you mentioned that it would be nice to try to do something similar to what Parachute Area Transit System is doing.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice to join forces with them.
Well, I will tell you that they lost their funding too.
Okay.
So the
Yeah.
transportation is with the county backing away from funding, it's all of a sudden become much more problematic.
Quick question. So even if the citizens, so then, the $40,000. So that would just be a contribution to them regardless of the citizens voting to be?
Correct. That would be using our general purpose dollars to help offset some of the hogback. Because one of the items that we have talked to RAFTA about is we've got this donut hole in the middle of the day where you can get to Glenwood or you can get to Rifle in the morning, but at noon, there's no way to get back. You have to wait until late in the afternoon before you're going to be able to come back, or vice versa. You can't get to Rifle or Glenwood at noon, but you can get back at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So
Okay, gotcha.
what that does is it makes a lot of people say, well, I'll just drive.
Yeah.
So they don't ride the bus. They don't choose to. One of the things that RAFTA has said is that they will likely try, and they recognize that donut hole is a problem and they're losing ridership because of it. They're still, according to the director, they're still looking at adding service in the middle of the day, even though continuation of the route seems somewhat up in the air come mid-year next year.
Gotcha. And you may not have the answer to this question, but because Newcastle is a member of RAFTA, that hogback route would still go
Yes.
to them?
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha.
And I'm planning on going to the Board of County Commissioners meeting. I think it's next Tuesday, the 21st.
Tuesday morning starts at 8 o'clock. A read I got was that maybe 10 o'clock. We have to get more information on what
But
that.
But I plan to attend and talk with them with some of Jim's guidance on prescient points to bring up about, it makes sense in a time of economic turmoil to reduce the funding, but not to remove it entirely. So they lost all of it. They went down to zero. I want to try and get some of that back for transportation. We know from people coming here, we know from the candidate forum, not just here, but in other towns, and what those candidates' comments were. We know from being out and about with the citizens of Sylph. We can't simply sit by idly while this happens. So my plan is to go there and advocate for a return of some, if not all, of that funding. Probably unlikely to get it all. But we also have the mayor's meeting right before that, so maybe grease some wheels there and talk with the other leadership of our other communities, see who's going, see what their messaging is going to be, and try and make sure we're presenting a unified voice to the commissioners that public transportation needs their help.
What's the county's availability to modify funding? Do they just do a budget by a certain time? Has that been finalized?
This is all part of their budget deliberations for the same
26.
thing we're doing right now,
Got
but
it.
they have notified RAFTA that line item has been eliminated. The county lost significant revenues from valuation of, mineral extraction. And so there's a belief, or at least it's been intimated, that this is probably a one-year glitch. But once funding gets pulled out, it's awfully hard to put it back in the next year.
And then the follow-up question, so if the voters decided to become part of RAFTA, then the hogback route, they would still come down here? Or
That would be the
that's-
theory. If the hogback route's not there, there isn't much value in the town levying
It'd be a hard,
sales tax or
Exactly,
property
That's
taxes
what I'm wondering, yeah.
for no service.
it'd be an
Yeah.
impossible sale to go, let's start
Right.
getting service. We
Right.
have nothing currently when it's been taken away.
And so I think there's gonna have to be some discussion relatively quickly to talk about what steps are out there. And, what that might look like, whether it's becoming a full member of RAFT or, more of a contributing, I don't have the answers for you, but I think there's gonna need to be more of a discussion. And bottom line is, you can't join RAFTA unless the voters approve it. That requires a vote of the electors to increase taxes. And, I think I'm trying to remember, but the it's been on the ballot once and it failed, and has it been brought to the board twice and the board has said, we're not putting it on the ballot 2 times? That's my recollection, and I look to you guys
I-
that have
I
been here a
believe so,
while
yeah.
to say yes or no that that's the case.
If we do decide to put in the ballot and gets passed, do we have any contractual guarantees that they will have the rides on specific terms that we assign, or are we still up to their board, up to them to
I-
decide?
You know, I don't have a definitive answer for you, but I think those are valid questions that as you look at, hey, if we're gonna put something on the ballot, we wanna make sure that we continue to get service at the west end of the county.
Whose
I
decision
think,
does it become?
I think those are very valid questions to pose in those discussions. And what guarantees do we have that you're gonna continue providing service down here? You know, and just, you know, Newcastle, they have a 0.8 cent sales tax for RAFTA. That would generate about $500,000 just from the town of Silt. When I talked to Manager Waller over at Rifle, he said that 0.8 would generate about $2 million. That's more than enough to fund and expand the hogback system at this end of the county. With or without the county's contribution. And I will, I don't want to disparage the county. They have their own budget issues that they're dealing with. But this isn't just an incorporated municipal issue for the county. This is a global issue.
And as we talk about people moving down valley and working up valley, is it even worth talking about a regional effort to talk? Because I would think that Aspen has a bigger tax participation, but there are a lot of employees that are up valley that live down valley, kind of changing the conversation a little bit to talk to the other towns. And
What was I say, are they still, is the county still contributing to the main part of, the other parts of RAFTA and just not the hogback and the parachute? Because if that's the case, it's kind of a kick in the teeth to everybody that lives west of Glenwood Springs.
I don't
Would
have,
be,
I don't
that
have,
might be a talking point for when you go there.
yeah, I don't have
because
that
that doesn't seem,
answer. But these are all issues. And I'll tell you that I'm sure Glenwood Springs is going, oh my God, if the hogback goes away, everyone that was taking the bus to get to Glenwood
Traffic.
is now jumping on a car and adding to the congestion getting into Glenwood, which is just gonna make that problem
so
worse.
instead of making the problem better, we're aggravating.
It's just a degradation of people going up valley. Now, right now, according to the survey that RAFTA did, the majority of the ridership that is getting on in Rifle and Silt is getting off and staying off in Glenwood. Anybody who's going up valley, they're driving. They're carpooling or driving because right now there isn't a flyer that you can get on at Rifle or Silt and it goes straight to Aspen. And, you know, I think that's, again, one of those service questions of, if we did this, can a flyer be put in place so that it would entice the people that are driving up valley to be able to get and efficiently get up valley, same as it would be if they were driving, just instead of 4 people in a car or 2 people in a car, it's 60 people on a bus. Eliminating a bunch of cars that are going to be on the road. But I think that those are all this discussion points that are going to, kind of come out of this. And you'll hear from the folks that did the transportation survey this evening. I think Kurt Ravenschlag is going to be in attendance tonight as questions may come up, how this pertains to RAFTA and everything that's going on. RAFTA's in a tough position. They just lost $540,000 worth of funding on something they thought they had. County told them that they were probably gonna take a haircut, but I don't think they were anticipating that their head was gonna get shaved.
So I'm okay with having the 40,000 in the budget, but RAFTA is a entity that taxpayers vote to be part of. So I think taking $40,000 of taxpayer money and backdooring it into RAFTA is dishonest to the citizens. I think it's our citizens. I think if we want to be part of RAFTA, it's a vote to our citizens and they choose whether or not they want to fund it.
I get that, Mr. Mayor. My argument to that would be, we've had people coming here in person, lots of them, to tell about the need of transportation. So the other side to that would be them having the service and not contributing anything towards it, and having the need for it, just like another perspective.
So should we fund someone that drives Uber? Should we back fund an Uber driver? to pay
Right
them?
now, I'm open for discussions. Right now, there's a need for transportation. However, we can offer that service for the people that have appointments in Glenwood or are disabled, can have this service. I think as a town, transportation is one of those basic needs, such as having good streets, good water. Transportation, I do believe, is a big one that falls on the town, on the city, on the area that takes care overall.
I think it's important too, but I don't know.
How?
I don't know if RAFTA is the best steward of taxpayers' dollars.
We'll have the discussion here with
Right.
Kurt.
Yeah.
By that logic, should we also go to the voters for youth zone? Because that is in effect our money, and I think we as elected officials, up to a certain amount, TBD, because we've never set a policy-based ceiling on it. I think the idea of having a ballot initiative to recurringly fund RAFTA, that goes on the ballot because that's a substantial revenue impact. I think the voters elected us to act on their best interests when it comes to $40,000 to see if something is viable and to get in the room and help make it perfect for the people. I think that the challenge of that philosophy is that everything has to go to the voters. If 40 meets that, does 10, does 8, does 5, does 3? At a certain point, the voters want us to do some of this work on their behalf so that they can go about their lives. And I think we know from the ongoing discussions about transportation that the voters care.
Even if we say we've had 100 people come in here,
That's still, yeah, is that worth 40 grand? Yeah.
of our
We
population.
know
when
anecdotally through
it's-
the candidate forums, we know through other candidates in other municipalities and their responses to it. I can only speak for myself. I know from just people talking to me about it and what a pain in the ass it is to get anywhere. I don't feel like $40,000 is a significant enough risk to the overall budget and well-being of the people of Silt to warrant sending this individual issue to them for a vote.
And they have to vote on it for us to be a member anyway.
Yeah.
So why don't we give them that opportunity?
They have to vote on it.
Well, the thing is, we can't get it
because
on the ballot this fall for something that's in jeopardy next year.
That, sounds like it's a quasi-emergency thing, and also we need the vote when we are increasing taxes. That's different than this, I think. So I think there's a distinction.
And we're spending some money on engineering for other projects, but we don't necessarily have approval for it from the electorate. But we spend that money on their behalf. because-
Within our city limits.
Yes.
That's the big difference, within our city limits. This is to help Aspen Hospital get their employees to there.
But our citizens. are
Aspen
still there.
Hospital, Valley View
But our
Hospital.
citizens are those people.
Those two entities could put up $40,000 and not notice a drop in the bucket.
And maybe that's part of the ongoing
$40,000
discussion.
is a large amount of money to this municipality.
No, it is. Yeah, youth zone's $4,000. This is 40 grand. Yeah.
Right, I used youth zone as an example of what is the bottom number? Is the bottom number $39,999? Or is it $9,999? I think this opportunity is well-timed, and it is worth the $40,000 cost to try and improve and increase public transportation for the people of Silt.
Especially if midday transportation is up for discussion and potentially the one that takes them directly to,
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm fine with having it in the budget, but I think there's a lot of discussion that needs to
Oh, yeah.
happen with
I,
RAFTA in
It's-
this room.
And I don't disagree with that sentiment. I think before you would write a check for $40,000 and hand it to RAFTA,
Yeah,
what are we getting out of this? Are we getting that you're gonna kill the service as of May of next year? Then
But I mean,
why
if
are
they're-
we,
if they're
why write a
moving-
$40,000 check?
if they're moving 30 people around in town, it's not worth $40,000, no matter what time of day they travel.
No, I agree with that. Yes.
There needs to be I see a number where it's viable. And if it costs the rider an extra $5 instead of the town money, RAFTA relies entirely too much on contributions to operate and not within ridership fees.
But a lot
Yeah.
of people that are riding the bus don't have the funds possibly already to do that. Otherwise, they would have a car, or they would have other options to get there. So that's where there's no easy solution on this, unfortunately.
But it would be cheaper to pay those 30 riders their
Riders.
bus fare than it would be
Than it would
40
be.
grand.
But the bus won't be there.
There's more than 30 riders.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's.
I mean, yes, it's probably an exaggeration, but
and how much more there would be if we have like more consistent type of service? What about the ones that are not using it? They're not using it because the timing, the hours, and they are finding alternative ways for that reason, which would be guessing, I know, but I know it's what if,
Yeah.
What comes first, the service or the usage of the service?
Well, the users aren't gonna use the service if the service isn't there, and that's the hard
Yes.
part of the argument, is that we don't know.
We don't know.
You could add 3 routes in the middle of the day, and service doesn't go, or the ridership doesn't go up at all. It probably won't go up immediately, because people have to learn about it. But how long, again, it's how long do you let that go on before you say, why are we doing it? We're not getting the ridership we need to make this viable, make these extra times viable.
you're right.
And I think that's more what I'm gonna look for at the end of this, is what did it cost per rider? If we're 50 or 60 bucks per rider to ride the bus somewhere, then it's not good use of our tax dollars.
Yeah, I would be interested in seeing some numbers.
Yeah, I think you're gonna have an interesting presentation tonight. I think it may lead to some other interesting conversation after the presentation, especially with Kurt in the room. But I think there's a lot more conversations that are gonna need to happen along the way. I personally would hate to see the hogback go away. I think having the ability to have some of that transportation is beneficial to the town. And without it, we're gonna lose something.
And not just beneficial to the people who are riding it, it's beneficial to everyone else by removing the traffic from the roads. But I think it's also our obligation to look after all our like vulnerable citizens and those without transportation. So, I think in a way it's something where you lose money in a similar way that you sort of lose money on senior housing, but I don't think that makes I think the expense is still very valid, even though it's not like a one-to-one where it's coming back to us, you know what I mean? So I do think, in a sense, maybe we are like prepared to take a loss financially, not we can avoid that if possible, right? That's the ideal, but I think that if we don't provide this service, we're really doing a disservice to our community. That's my opinion. And if it were available, I would use it.
But how many bus passes would $40,000 buy? Because then that 40 grand is going directly to the people that use it. I mean, RAFTA's going to get the 40 grand.
Well, but
But
there,
that 40 grand, it doesn't go to RAFTA's admin or salary for the CEOs or anything like that. That 40 grand is actually going to the people that need the service.
But what if RAFTA goes away and we don't have RAFTA coming out here? So I
Then we
think
join forces with the Down Valley folks for 40 grand.
But they don't have anything currently. They may lose.
I know,
theirs
I
completely as
know.
well.
I mean, a lot of this is pie in the sky, but I'm
Yeah.
just saying.
But
yeah.
so the 40 grand isn't
And the,
about
and
getting
the service
people a
from
bus ticket.
from
It's
Parachute
about-
to here is as far as it is from here to Glenwood. So that's
Yeah.
not like it would. They're going to go from Parachute all of a sudden now Parachute all the way to. They say they go to Newcastle because then Newcastle has the ridership still because they're a member of RAFTA.
No, that's true. I guess all I'm saying is if RAFTA ceases to exist down here, then I guess we
It's irrelevant.
join our neighbors and create our own.
And if we didn't pay the cost to preserve
Well,
RAFTA.
that
we-
cost is going to be a lot more than $40,000.
No, you all have
That's not going
very
to buy a
valid
bus,
points.
let alone
yes.
multiple or whatever we would need to
Yeah.
do that.
Right. I think we're gonna have to have more discussion on this along the way.
Yes, okay.
Let me just
That was
kind
not
of
the
wrap
time.
up my
That was
piece
not
of
the
this, and then Director Centeno has 482 slides she's gotta go through.
Oh, 400.
Nice.
That conversation, she doesn't have as many now. Maybe.
So under the town manager's budget, we did add an assistant to the town manager, GIS coordinator position that would be funded 33% by the general fund, 33% by water, and 33% by wastewater. This is just an administrative position to really improve our GIS capabilities, but it would also provide me some relief in some of the things that I do on a day-to-day basis. But that's included in the budget. That's the big change in the town manager side.
Can I ask a quick question about the assistant?
Yeah.
Is there an opportunity in year one to use a VA?
The
Veterans Administration.
Virtual assistant,
Oh.
someone who isn't here, is elsewhere, but has the
can't tell me you're cold.
No, someone was smoking.
Oh.
Sorry.
Okay.
I
Amy?
used to smoke.
Yeah, Amy?
Probably Amy.
They have the expertise, they're well vetted, but they don't have to physically be here, and the cost could be a lot lower.
Not to do the GIS piece. And the GIS piece is probably one of our most important pieces of the position. We're figuring that 80% of the time for this position is going to be working with the geographic information system, updating and adding layers that we need so that we
They
can
need to
use the
be
system.
Physically
And
here to do
they
that.
need to be physically here.
Okay.
The last slide that I've got, or the last piece that I've got, is town clerk, treasurer, and general administration. We have included in the budget $250,000 for the tobacco tax revenue. We include a $150,000 transfer that would go into the Conservation Trust Fund for park improvement projects. The other, and Director Centeno will talk about this a little bit more, $50,000 would be for events, $50,000 for programs. Those aren't, in stone numbers, but that's just how we kind of parse the dollars out. And then our transfer to cover capital projects is about $780,000 this year. That would be the funds that we would be pulling out of reserves to fund everything that isn't necessarily funded. Some of that is dollars that we receive for the road improvements, et cetera. So it's not all coming out of reserves, but the vast majority of it is. And that concludes everything that I had. I apologize, Director Centeno, for getting 10 minutes into your time.
Oh, I can talk quick.
Lee?
Okay. I kept the same format that we've done over the last couple of years. So I'm gonna breeze through some of this because I'm assuming that at this point, everybody knows what ComDev does. So we have our team on the first slide, an overview of ComDev being administration, building, code compliance, planning and zoning, recreation and events. Our 2025 budget for administration was $50,125. I apologize on the 2025 accomplishments. I was missing information, so I do have that plugged into mine that I can breeze through really quickly. The average social media post engagement is 9,128, with 68.4% of those being followers and 31.6% being non-followers. We have 3.4 thousand followers on Facebook and significantly less Instagram followers at 180. We have 442 TextMyGov members and have a combination of incoming and outgoing messages of 131,355 messages. And that is all that was missing. Oh, and then we had 109 town center rentals. So
You know-
that fills in some of that gap. Yes.
Just curious, do you know how many people subscribe to the email, the town email?
I can find that information out.
If you ever think of it.
Yes. Yep, I actually just created my login for that today. Currently Marcella's been doing that. Our utility billing clerk, when she goes out for maternity leave, it's gonna switch over to ComDev. And so I will have a better understanding of what that entails and looks like over the next month as she's heading out for maternity leave. The 26 proposed budget is at 190,000, which includes a 279% increase, which the increase is actually reflecting the personnel for the code and comprehensive plan rewrite that Manager Mann had already previously highlighted, as well as the code compliance technician. So it's an increase, but it's really personnel increase costs. And then our other goals and objectives are what Manager Mann had also highlighted, being the town website. And we are not going to continue the integration of our, and this is kind of dipping into the building side, but we're not going to continue the integration of Cloud Permit. We're looking at other software. Cloud Permit ended up not being as user-friendly for our community, nor was it as friendly on the backside for our staff. So it did not save the time that we were hoping for it to save, so it did not accomplish what we were wanting it to accomplish. Concerns are always space, which we're in the middle of the space needs analysis. And then jumping onto the building department, we had a budget of a $206,050. Goodness gracious, I cannot talk tonight. There's the list of 25 accomplishments and our goals and objectives for next year. Our proposed budget is going to be $134,950, which is a decrease. That decrease is primarily because we took the building inspector position funding out of the budget and switched it back over to contracted services for Shums Coda, which seems to be what is working for our setup at this point in time, because Shums they consistently have somebody available, and we've still just struggled finding a qualified building inspector or somebody that's interested in doing that job. So it's actually a little less money to stay with Shums by taking that out of the budget. And then we have a list of the concerns and objectives for next year. And then jumping to code compliance, I just did a quick breakdown. We don't have a lot of statistics on this because it's a new position that that Miss Jordan Wakefield has just stepped into. So we'll have more information in the future, but I just did a breakdown of what that position is gonna be responsible for, which is ensuring compliance with the municipal code, which primarily includes community engagement and education, and then after the soft touch, then it would come down to the enforcement. And then jumping to planning and zoning. The budget was $171,200, and there's a list of what is encompassed in planning and zoning. There's a list of accomplishments for 25. And then our goals and objectives for 26. And this budget has decreased by 53%. And the decrease is because the town has satisfied the reimbursement obligations for the Metro District. So now that River Trace is completely built out, we did the reimbursement for all of their buildings, and that's not gonna be part of the budget. So that accounts for that decrease. The Planning and Zoning Commission, there was a couple of changes this year. The Board of Trustees had adopted the 7-person board, so that changes this slideshow from last year. And there's also a quorum of 4 instead of 3 that would be highlighted for changes for the 26. There's the accomplishments for 25, and then the budget decreases by 2% for this line item. And issues and concerns, I think it's just attendance for the most part. We want to make sure that now that we're at a 7-person board and the quorum increased from 3 to 4, that we're able to have a quorum at every month. And we have had conversation with the Planning Commission. We did an ethics training this last month on September 16th. And everybody's up to speed on that ethics training, and part of that ethics training included attendance and the need to be here in person and not virtually. So we are hoping that conversation will increase attendance at the Planning Commission meetings. And then we jump into recreation. And the accomplishments for this year, we did add girls volleyball this year. And then goals for next year would be to continue to grow our existing programming and integrate flag football is the next sport that we've had interest from the community in. And then we want to continue to grow our baseball programming. We had originally set up that we were going to do a stair-stepping program where we were going to have t-ball and then coach pitch, and then 8 to 10, and then 11 to 13 baseball and softball. As we have discovered over the last couple of years, we're not going to just be able to open up and have the older age groups. We have to build those age groups. So as we've had t-ball, we have reoccurring players that come back that then filled a coach pitch team. Now that we have the coach pitch team filled this year, when they age up to the 8 to 10, and we'll continue to put it out there and advertise it, but the program building is just going to look a little different because we have to build those players up to go to the next age. They're not just existing and ready to step into those older age groups. A lot of those players are within CRV already. So
Yes, they've already been started with other programs, and they have their teams they've been playing on
Yes, yeah.
versus building it and then continuing it, and then of course keeping going with the lower levels to
Yes.
continue to fill it as we go.
Yes,
That
yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, so that's what we've discovered with the baseball programming and why we didn't have full baseball teams and softball teams this year is because we haven't had enough years established to build into that next age group yet. So we're going to continue with what we're doing, and eventually we'll build into that programming and expand baseball in our area. This budget does increase by 80%, and that is with the projected revenue of a $50,000 tax, tobacco tax. And issues and concerns are always referee abuse and retaining coaches and referees, especially as people age out of the program. We need that next generation of coaches and refs to step in and continue programming. And then we jump into special events. And we have our 25 accomplishments this year, with two save the dates. Those have not been accomplishments yet, but just in case anybody was looking at the slideshow from the public, I wanted to make sure that we highlighted those as save the dates. The proposed budget increases by 56%, which again includes the projected tobacco tax of $50,000. And last but not least, the tobacco tax funding. We wanted to highlight that the town is on the November ballot for the tobacco tax that would benefit recreation, parks, and events. And I did a little blurb on who would benefit and how. The additional funding would enable the town to add recreation programs. Some of the recreation programs that we have talked about adding would be a horseshoe tournament. We did one skateboard tournament this year, and we would like to do another skateboarding tournament to equal up to 2 a year, and then adding flag football, and then expanding our existing programming would be our 26th goal if that funding was received. And then parks would also benefit. There would be increased ability for maintenance, upgrades, and acquisition of property for sports fields, and development of the 7th Street Plaza. That would be over several years, not just for 26, that would benefit parks. And then to include events also, we were looking to do a farm-to-table dinner next year, and we would like to increase our concert series, whether that be an additional concert up at the pavilion or doing a smaller version of a concert and like vendor fair at Veterans Park, and eventually on 7th Street Plaza when that's developed. We would like to expand. And then the vendor fair / market is also something that we've had an interest from the community with. We wouldn't jump back into doing like a weekly farmers market because all of the farmers markets in the valley struggled this year. We went from no farmers markets prior to 2020 to a farmers market in every town every night of the week. And we're all super close to each other, so it's hard to get citizens to continue to go from one town to the next to support the same vendors just 7 miles away weekly. So I think there's a lot of people that are kind of rethinking and revamping their thought process around weekly farmers markets as well. But we would like to do a couple different markets, whether it's a craft fair around Christmas time or leading up to Christmas, or we do maybe a monthly farmers market / vendor fair type of scenario. But the tobacco tax funding would help create an opportunity to do something like that as well. And that is all I have. I talked fast. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah. I did vote for the tobacco tax, so hopefully
All right, we got one.
it passes.
We're one closer.
Anecdotally, I was just going to say maybe for farmers markets, because I love them, maybe we need to think more regionally and coordinate with the other towns. Or like our chamber, as a regional chamber or something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe not as often, like you said, but that could be something where we sort of join forces with other people. I don't know.
I think that's a great idea. That's something I had brought up to a couple of the other rec departments that are running the farmers markets. And then some of them are outside entities running them. That even if we just had one that each town had a hosting week.
Right.
And then it kind of spread it out a little bit.
That would help,
But
I think, everybody out.
Yeah.
So we don't feel like we're
agree.
competing with each other and.
It's better to
It's all the
support
same
each other
vendors
than to
anyways.
compete with each other. Yeah.
The chambers talked about it in the abstract, and I spoke with a bunch of vendors during Heyday, And they feel the same thing, which is exhaustion and reduced revenue. They're hustling. Most of them have regular jobs, and they're hustling to try and go on 3, 4, sometimes 5 nights a week to different markets. They're not seeing a lot of ROI on it because they're going to 4 or 5 per week. I think that's a perfect opportunity for either the chamber or the Economic Development Partnership to really act as a central steward for that and manage it regionally for the vendors as well as us from municipalities.
They act as like a coordination point for everybody versus everybody trying to do it on
Exactly.
their own.
Hey, sign up with them here, and they're, you know, in Rifle, they're now doing Third Thursdays, which is a separate type of an event for a separate audience. But I think there are other opportunities like that Silk could do rather than a traditional farmers market every week. There's a lot of different potentials, a lot of different
Sundays?
items with potential.
Do the 6 Sundays.
That may work on your calendar. Yeah, I do think it needs to be centralized and handled more regionally. I think, again, I know it's hard for the vendors because they told me.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense.
That could be a better way to get the word out.
Yep.
You know, if it's more of a concerted effort too, so then people feel like they're not just there and no one knows that they're there.
Yep.
half the
I mean,
time.
if you're doing things, expanding things like talking about with the smaller concerts too, is it'd be a way to get some of the local bands that aren't as big, that aren't gonna cost much. But then again, some of that's the Veterans Park improvements of having a stage or something, somewhere for them to play on versus just setting up on the street. But finding ways for some of that stuff, I think would definitely be, and then coordinating that with the vendor fair type things and whatnot, so it makes it more of an event. It's not just one or the other.
I agree.
Another busy year.
Okay.
Can I ask a quick question? Sorry, I was trying to get to the right slide.
Yes.
Training opportunities for the Planning and Zoning Commission. Do you have something specific in mind?
We did the ethics training, and I know that several of the commissioners have voiced, and I think we answered a lot of the questions that they had, but they had also voiced some questions about, well, what if this happens, or what if that happens? And so just giving them additional, even if it's not like an all-together training, just giving them additional resources to help empower them to feel comfortable in the role that they're in.
Like maybe some access to online classes or something like that, that kind of stuff you're thinking about, or?
Yeah, it could be online classes, or it could be a time frame that we break down during a meeting or before a meeting, that it's
Work session.
Here's a work session that is for like, here's this part of the code, here's what's meant, and make sure that we're all on the same interpretation of the code. And
That makes sense.
I mean, because there's certain things that I think people interpret differently, and then there's a little bit of question about, well, what if it's not in code?
I mean, to
Then
be
we
honest,
just
if
don't
you were to do like just code training before the
Yes.
meetings and work sessions,
Yeah,
I'd be interested in coming and attending if I was able to, just to get a better understanding myself, so
yeah,
that would be good.
yeah, and I think that would be highly beneficial to start as we're going through the 16 and 17 code rewrites and comp plan code rewrite, because at that point, everybody's learning it all
Yeah, I
together.
would say just definitely would teach the parts of the code that are correct and not the parts that we plan on rewriting soon.
Yes.
So we're not learning and then relearning it.
Yes.
Well, and I think one of the things that we've talked about with, especially with 16 and 17, is to write it in language that we all understand.
Mhm.
Yeah,
We have sections of code, and this isn't necessarily just 16 and 17. We were going through the animal code as it pertains to dogs. If you would like to put yourself to sleep, feel free to read that and then report back on what it means, because I think we'd like to know too.
Do you think people were just trying to sound smarter than they were when they wrote it, or is it just?
The way that
I mean, I
people
don't know,
write
sometimes it just
laws
doesn't make sense.
sometimes is so, it's baffling.
Yeah, come on, Ms. Attorney.
I
Educate us on
really
that.
try my hardest to just speak English to people, and I read it and I translate it. That's part of what I do, because sometimes it's like, no normal
It's a whole
person
nother
could read
language.
this, nor would they ever want to. But, I mean,
I-
they're trying hard, they got a hard job, they're trying to make it so
Well,
it works for everybody, you know. Not-
lawyers
not
tend to
knock
be
those people,
verbose.
But,
Dog shall be on a leash. Dog shall be under the control of the blah, 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 on a lead that is not longer than blah, 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 blah. Okay, they get very specific because people bend rules, but it gets the point. I used to go through bond resolutions, which are 50-page documents, and have to explain what each section meant, because each section was, hundreds of words, and it meant that you're obligated to pay this back.
And that's all it meant.
That's what it says. You're obligated to pay. This section says you are obligated to pay this back. You're not going to get out of it.
Yeah.
That's it. But it's 3 paragraphs worth to say that.
Got a question, maybe for Joel, backing up. So this swamp or field, where's the access gonna be? I mean, because the state just doesn't, they're not just gonna give you an access off of Highway 6.
Believe it or not, I believe there's a dedicated access.
There is, and I think it would be like 11th Street if you did your numbers.
Yeah.
We would.
it's on that map that we were talking
Yeah.
about, it's
We-
in there. so
We
we're
have
good.
conceptually thought it would be on the eastern end of the property.
So towards the
Yes.
storage someplace
Yes.
back in there. It's pretty steep in there, though. That'd take it.
That's the least steep spot.
Well, I know, but I mean, the whole thing is steep.
Yeah.
Would they require an exit or an excel and decel lane, or would they just let you? I mean, I'm just curious.
Honestly, that would all be part of the planning
Right.
process, and they may or they may not.
Okay. So you're talking by the restaurant down, or the old,
Yes.
the store or whatever it is
Right.
down.
La Placida too.
And who knows, by then, other things may change with that, where
Okay.
you don't have to get as many authorizations,
Maybe.
depending on other decisions that are made.
I was gonna say, these other applicants need an ingress where they can't have one down on Sixth. I think that's maybe why Jerry asked the question, so
Yeah.
the map does need updating.
Well, it might be, it may be easier to have more control, so that way we don't have to ask for permission on a lot of things. Granted, it doesn't come free.
Interestingly, I did learn from the town manager in Newcastle that they have not devolved the highway and they do not own it.
But they have control.
They do not
They
have
don't have
control.
But the speed
They're
limit's
just gonna allow you to
25.
reduce
But the
speed
speed,
limits.
they fought and succeeded in getting the speed limit
See,
knocked
we're
down
not
to 25.
being irritating enough.
I guess not. I know. Yeah.
We're waiting for them to
Irritating
come
is
back
probably
with their
the
study.
wrong word.
But you may be correct on the irritating part.
Well, in
They are
Newcastle,
busy,
Newcastle
though.
may be able to argue that they do have a longer stretch with more businesses.
You know, it's hard to say.
Yeah,
What the reasoning is,
it's because they're part of RAFTA.
Maybe they've been at it for longer because their population has been bigger for longer. And we just need to get there.
yeah. So our next steps is, we've got another work session on the 27th. We'll be going through the police department, public works, parks, and utilities budgets at that point. Then we'll go into November 10, which is more of a broad budget discussion, but we'll also have an executive session that night to talk about compensation and benefits. I think there's a discussion for the board to have that that fits within an executive session, because you'll be talking about compensation issues. And then, last one would be November 24, if necessary, with your adoption on December 8. And that's what we've got for tonight.
Thanks for all the work you already put into it.
Yeah, thanks for all the,
Thank you.
everything you guys do.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
I appreciate it being succinct and not having to have a bunch of stuff we didn't need to see over and over and over again.
I try my best.
Take notes. I'm just kidding, Nicole.
See if she puts your picture in her report ever again. Yeah.
I even had your picture in there.
Twice. These
that?
two
I'm sorry?
pictures of trustee Britnell.
Yeah, I did.
So
Picture me in there?
Two.
I didn't even see it.
perhaps a recess
there ain't
until
gonna be any
7
more
o'clock when
now.
the regular meeting starts.
Recess till 7 when the meeting.
Oh, yeah, there we are.
Yeah.
Wow, I was a
Having a
mess.
great time because the director sent you.
Nicole's editing you out right now.
Oh, no, I definitely, oh, yeah, and then me again.
She's